The great crystal dome stretched high above Elena Vasquez like a frozen ocean wave. She stood alone in the center of the massive chamber, her small human form dwarfed by the towering seats that rose in circles around her. Each seat held one of the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy. Their eyes watched her with cold judgment. Elena wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with gold trim that caught the strange light filtering through the crystal walls. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her weathered hands stayed calm at her sides even though her heart pounded like a war drum. She had served as Earth's ambassador for 20 years, but today felt different. Today felt final. The Nexari hegemon spoke first. Its voice came from a translator device since its real words sounded like grinding metal. The creature looked like a giant spider made of black stone with too many eyes that glowed red in its massive head. "Human delegate," the hegemon said, each word dropping like a stone into still water. "You stand accused of crimes against galactic order. How do you answer?" Elena lifted her chin. "I am here to listen to your charges, honored hegemon. But I reserve the right to speak truth in response." A ripple of what might have been laughter came from the Zephyrian council member. The floating jellyfish-like being pulsed with colors that hurt to look at directly. Its thoughts entered Elena's mind without permission, feeling cold and slimy. Truth? Such a human concept. So limited. The Korthik representative slammed one of its forearms against its chair. The lizard being's scales turned from green to angry. "Red. Enough philosophy. State the charges clearly." The hegemon's translator hummed for a moment. "The human species stands accused of aggressive expansion beyond approved boundaries. You have colonized 47 worlds without permission from this council. You have uplifted lesser species without authorization. Most serious of all, you have refused repeated orders to limit your population and territorial growth." Elena had expected these words, but hearing them still felt like a physical blow. 47 worlds. Millions of families who had built new lives under alien stars. Children born on distant planets who had never seen Earth's blue sky, all of it labeled as crime. "The territories we settled were uninhabited," Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "We harmed no one. We displaced no one. We followed all established protocols for claiming empty worlds." Empty by whose definition? The Altarian council member spoke through crystalline chimes that somehow formed words. The tall, thin being looked like living glass, beautiful and sharp. "The galaxy has rules, human. Order must be maintained." "We have maintained order," Elena replied. "Our colonies are peaceful, our trade is fair. We have helped younger species develop technology and medicine. We have asked only for the right to exist and grow." The Volter ambassador's tentacles writhed in agitation. The squid-like being's skin flashed patterns that the translator rendered as words. "Growth, always growth with humans. Like a disease that spreads without limit. This is why you are dangerous." Elena felt anger rising in her chest but kept her voice steady. "Growth is life, expansion is exploration. These are not crimes in any law I know. They are crimes against stability," the hegemon said. "For 10,000 years this council has maintained peace through order. Each species has its place. Each world has its purpose. Boundaries exist for good reason. Whose boundaries?" Elena asked. "Who decided that humans should be limited to 12 worlds when the Nexari control over 300? Who determined that we cannot help other species when the Altarians have been doing exactly that for millennia?" Silence fell over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Elena could feel the weight of their stares, the pressure of their combined displeasure, but she had come too far to stop speaking now. "You fear us," she said simply. "Not because we are violent, not because we are cruel. You fear us because we do not accept that things must always stay the same." The Zephyrian's mental voice cut through her thoughts again, sharper this time. "Fear? You mistake caution for fear, little mammal? We have seen species like yours before. They burn bright and fast, leaving only ashes." "Perhaps," Elena said. "But we have also seen species like yours, ancient, powerful, comfortable, you have forgotten what it means to dream of something better. The Korthic representative hissed, its scales now pure crimson. Arrogance, typical human arrogance. You are infants compared to us. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species learned to make fire. And what have you done with all that time? Elena asked. You divide the galaxy into cages. You decide which species deserve advancement and which must remain primitive. You hoard knowledge and power while entire civilizations struggle in darkness? Is this the great wisdom of age? The Volter's patterns flashed angry red. You speak of things you do not understand. Order prevents chaos. Hierarchy prevents war. We have learned these lessons through pain and loss across eons. Have you? Elena stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. Or have you simply become comfortable with a system that benefits those already in power? When did the wise protectors of the galaxy become its prison wardens? The hegemon's red eyes flared brighter. Enough, you prove our point with every word. Humans cannot accept their proper place. They question what should not be questioned. They upset balances that have lasted longer than your entire evolutionary history. Elena looked up at each of the 12 council members in turn. Beings of immense power and knowledge, rulers of star systems and civilizations beyond counting. In their alien faces she saw the same thing. Fear wrapped in pride, weakness hidden behind strength. You are right about one thing, she said. We do not accept our proper place if that place means abandoning our friends to suffering we could. Ease. We do not accept boundaries drawn by those who never asked our permission. We do not accept that the galaxy must remain forever frozen in patterns decided by others. The chamber erupted in sounds, hisses from the Korthak, chiming discord. From the Altarian? Mental screams from the Zephyrion that made Elena's head throb. Other sounds from species whose names she had memorized, but whose cultures remained mysterious after decades of diplomacy. The hegemon's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Silence. The noise died instantly. The council has heard enough. Human ambassador, your species has been tried and found guilty of crimes against galactic order. The sentence is exile. Elena's heart stopped for a moment, then began beating so hard she thought it might burst. Exile. She had feared this outcome, but hoped against hope it would not come to pass. Exile to where? She asked, though she already suspected the answer. Beyond. The Galactic Rim, the hegemon said with what sounded like satisfaction. To the void between. Your species has 30 standard years to evacuate all claimed territories and remove yourselves from civilized space. The void between. Elena had studied the old charts and reports. A region of space where stars were sparse and strange energies made travel dangerous. Ships that ventured too far into the void sometimes never returned. Others came back with crews driven mad by things they claimed to have seen. The void between is barely habitable, Elena said. You are not offering exile. You are ordering execution by slow starvation. We are offering survival to those wise. Enough to accept their limitations, the Altarian said through its crystal chimes. The void is harsh, but life is possible for those who adapt. You will have 30 years to prepare, the Volter added, its patterns now a cold blue. Time. To develop the technologies you will need. Time to say your farewells to the galaxy of civilized species. Elena straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin higher. When she spoke, her voice carried a quality that made several council members lean forward in their seats. You mistake mercy for weakness, she said. You mistake retreat for surrender. You believe that sending us into darkness will make us disappear like a bad dream. She turned slowly, meeting the gaze of each council member. But humans do not simply disappear. We do not quietly accept defeat. We adapt, we learn, we remember. The hegemon's red eyes dimmed slightly. Are you threatening this council? I am making a promise, Elena said. You are sending us away because you fear what we might become. If we stayed, but exile will not stop our growth. Isolation will not limit our dreams. You may drive us into the void, but you cannot control what we do there. She paused, letting her words sink in. History will remember this day. but not as the day you solved the human problem. History will remember this as the day you created something far beyond your power to control. The Zephyrian's mental voice was quieter now, uncertain. What do you mean? Elena smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she felt truly calm. You have spent so much time maintaining order that you have forgotten the power of chaos. You have become so comfortable with your control that you cannot imagine what happens when that control is challenged by something you cannot predict or contain. She gestured toward the crystal dome above them. You rule this galaxy through fear and tradition? You maintain your power because everyone accepts that this is how things must be. But what happens when someone stops accepting? What happens when someone proves that your way is not the only way? The chamber fell silent again, but this silence felt different, heavier, more uncertain. Elena continued, her voice now carrying across the vast space like a bell. You are exiling us because we ask uncomfortable questions. Because we help species you prefer to keep dependent. Because we grow when you demand we remain small. You hope that 30 years in the void will break us, teach us humility, force us to accept our proper place when we return. She shook her head slowly. But what if we do not return as humble supplicants? What if 30 years in the darkness teaches us things you never imagined? What if we come back not seeking forgiveness, but offering you the choice we never had? The hegemon's voice was quieter now. What choice? Elena's smile widened. The choice to join us willingly, or to learn the hard way that the galaxy has changed beyond your ability to control it. She turned and began walking toward the chamber's exit. 30 years, honored council? Count them carefully. As the great doors closed behind her, Elena heard the first sounds of argument beginning among the 12 species that ruled the galaxy. For the first time in 10,000 years, they were no longer certain they had made the right choice. Elena walked through the corridors of Nexus Station with steady steps, her mind already turning to the massive task ahead. 47 worlds to evacuate, 3 billion people to transport across impossible distances, an entire civilization to rebuild in the hostile depths of space. But humans had done impossible things before. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had built cities in deserts and sent ships across empty oceans guided only by stars. They had reached for the sky when gravity said stay down, had split atoms when physics said it could not be done. Now they would learn what lay beyond the edge of everything known. As Elena reached her transport, she looked back once at the crystal spires of Nexus Station. Beautiful and ancient, a symbol of order that had lasted longer than human civilization. But even the strongest crystal could shatter if struck in just the right place. She boarded her ship and began composing the message that would change everything. The first words of humanity's exodus into darkness. The beginning of their transformation into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Council had given them 30 years in exile. Elena wondered if 30 years would be enough. Admiral Chen Zhao stood on the bridge of the massive transport ship Odyssey Dawn, watching through the viewport as New Terra grew smaller in the distance. The planet had been humanity's proudest colony, a world of green fields and blue oceans that reminded everyone of Earth. Now it was just another light in the darkness, soon to be lost forever. Final transport is away from the surface, reported Commander Sarah Kim, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Evacuation of New Terra is complete. Chun nodded without taking his eyes from the viewport. How many? 800,000 souls aboard 17 ships, Kim replied. We managed to save the seed banks, the cultural archives, and most of the industrial equipment. Chun's jaw tightened. 800,000 people forced to abandon the only home many of them had ever known. This was the 23rd world they had evacuated in the past 5 years. 24 more to go. Set course for the rendezvous point, Chen ordered. The other fleets will be waiting. As the Odyssey Dawn turned away from New Terra, Chen thought about the message Elena Vasquez had sent to every human world 3 years ago. Her words still echoed in his mind. We are leaving, but we are not surrendering. Pack everything that matters. We will need it all. Most people had focused on the evacuation orders, the transport schedules, the million details of moving an entire civilization. But Jin had heard something else in Elena's words, a plan, a purpose beyond simple survival. The journey to the Outer Rim took 6 weeks. During that time, Jun watched his people adapt to ship life with the same stubborn determination that had carried humanity to the stars. Children who had played in real grass learned to run through metal corridors. Farmers who had worked soil under open sky began growing food in hydroponic gardens under artificial lights. Teachers held classes in cargo bays, keeping hope alive. Through education. Dr. Sarah Okafor was one of those teachers, though her students were not children. The tall woman with intricate braids gathered the colony's best scientists in the Odyssey Dawn's converted laboratory every day. Today she stood before a group of 30 researchers, their faces lit by the glow of portable computers. The Council believes they are sending us to die, Sarah said, her voice calm and confident. They think the void between is empty space where nothing can survive. They are wrong. She activated a holographic display showing star charts of the region beyond the galactic rim. Look at these energy readings. Strange particles that follow no known physics. Spatial distortions that suggest folded space-time. This is not empty void. This is something we have never encountered before. Dr. Marcus Webb, a physicist from New Terra, raised his hand. But Sarah, our ships barely function properly in those fields. The navigation computers fail. Even our basic life support systems struggle. Exactly, Sarah smiled. Our current technology fails because it was designed for normal space. But what if we could develop new technology designed specifically for the void? What if the very forces that make the region hostile could be turned into advantages? Another scientist, Dr. Lisa Chun, leaned forward. You're talking about completely rewriting our understanding of physics. That could take decades. We have 30 years, Sarah replied. And we have something the Galactic Council does not expect us to have, desperation paired with ingenuity. History shows that humans do their best work when survival depends on innovation. She gestured to the star charts again. The Council sees the void as a prison. I see it as a laboratory. A place where we can experiment with technologies too dangerous to test near inhabited worlds. A space where we can grow without interference. Meanwhile, on a transport ship called Freedom's Hope, 8-year-old Tommy Martinez sat with his grandmother in what had once been a storage compartment. The small space now housed 6 families, their possessions reduced to whatever could fit in regulation travel cases. Grandma Rosa, will we ever go home? Tommy asked, looking up at the woman who had raised him since his parents died in a mining accident. Rosa Martinez smoothed the boy's dark hair with weathered hands. This ship is our home now, Mio. Home is not a place. Home is the people who love you, but I miss my room. I miss playing outside. I miss the smell of rain. Rosa was quiet for a moment, remembering her own childhood on Earth, then her young adult years on New Terra, 2 homes lost in one lifetime. But she had lived through enough to know that endings could become beginnings. Let me tell you a story, she said. A long time ago, my great-grandmother left everything she knew to travel across an ocean to a new land. She was scared, just like... Yes, but she carried something more important than possessions. What did she carry? Hope, the knowledge that her children would have better lives than she did, that they would build something beautiful in the new place. Tommy looked around the cramped compartment. This does not look very beautiful, Rosa laughed softly. Not yet, but we are like seeds, Mio. Seeds look small and dead when you plant them, but give them time, water, and care, and they grow into something amazing. While families like the Martinez struggled with displacement and loss, other humans were already working on Elena's secret plan. Captain Maria Santos commanded a small stealth ship called Ghost Runner, one of 50 vessels that had quietly separated from the main evacuation fleets. Approaching coordinates 77 Alpha, reported her navigator, Lieutenant James Park. No Council ships in sensor range. Maria studied the readouts from her ship's passive sensors. They were deep in Council space, technically violating the exile order, but the risk was necessary. Begin deployment of Package 1. The Ghost Runner's cargo bay opened, releasing what looked like a small asteroid into space. But the rock was hollow, filled with automated manufacturing equipment, quantum computers, and enough supplies to operate for decades. To any scanner, it would appear to be debris. In reality, it was humanity's first hidden base in Council territory. Package deployed successfully, Park reported. Activating stealth mode. The fake asteroid drifted into the shadow of a real moon, invisible to casual observation. Inside its metal shell, machines began the slow process of building a secret facility. This was the first of hundreds of such bases that would be scattered throughout the galaxy over the next decade. Hidden eyes and ears that would watch the Council worlds and gather intelligence for humanity's eventual return. Maria felt a mixture of excitement and fear as the Ghost Runner slipped away undetected. If they were caught, the consequences would be severe, but if they succeeded, humanity would have advantages the Council could never imagine. Years passed. The great exodus continued as transport fleets moved like a slow river of lights toward the edge of known space. By the 10th year, 45 of 47 human worlds had been evacuated. Only Earth and the industrial world of New Pittsburgh remained. On Earth, President Jennifer Walsh stood in her office overlooking the sprawling city of Geneva. The planet that had given birth to humanity was now nearly empty. Most of its 12 billion people had already left for the outer rim, taking with them the accumulated knowledge and culture of their species. The last civilian transports depart tomorrow, reported her aide, David Kumar. Military evacuation begins next week. Jennifer nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Any word from the scout ships? Preliminary reports from the advance teams are ... interesting. Admiral Chun says the void is even stranger than our models predicted. But he also says it might be exactly what we need. Jennifer turned from the window. Meaning? David consulted his tablet. The energy fields that disrupt our technology also hide us from long-range sensors. The spatial distortions that make navigation difficult could theoretically be used for faster-than-light travel if we can learn to control them. And there are resources out there unlike anything in normal space. Resources the Council knows nothing about, Jennifer mused. Exactly. Dr. Okoffer's teams think we might be able to develop entirely new technologies using void-based materials and energy sources, things that would give us significant advantages if we ever return to Council space. Jennifer walked to her desk and picked up a small object, a piece of marble from the ruins of the ancient Parthenon. She had carried it with her since childhood, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations could fall, but their ideas could survive. Have the historical archives been fully transferred? Yes, ma'am. Every book, every piece of art, every scientific paper, every cultural recording. If humanity survives this exile, we will remember who we were. Jennifer set down the marble and looked at David. When we survive this exile, David, when, not if, and when we return, the galaxy will discover that trying to destroy us only made us stronger. The final evacuation of Earth began 3 weeks later. Jennifer Walsh was among the last to leave, standing in the empty presidential office as her security team waited impatiently. Ma'am, we really need to go, urged Captain Rodriguez. The transport window is closing. Jennifer took one last look around the room where so many crucial decisions had been made. Then she picked up the piece of marble and walked toward the door. Ready, Captain. Let's go build a new world. As Earth fell behind them, Jennifer's transport joined the tail end of humanity's great migration. 3 billion people in thousands of ships, carrying everything they could save from 47 worlds. Children born in space who would grow. Up in the void, scientists working on theories that could reshape physics. Soldiers training for wars that might not come for decades, but perhaps most importantly, they carried Elena Vasquez's promise. The Council had exiled humanity expecting them to wither and die in the darkness. Instead, they were about to discover what happened when you gave the most adaptable species in the galaxy both motivation and privacy. The first transport ships reached the edge of the void between in the 15th year of exile. What they found there would have terrified the Galactic Council if they had known. Strange energies that responded to human will in ways that defied explanation. Particles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Regions of space where time moved differently. Allowing years of work to be compressed into months, Admiral Chun established the first permanent settlement on a rogue planet drifting in the deep void. They called it Haven, and within months it housed 1 million people. But Haven was just the beginning. As more ships arrived, more settlements were built, not just on planets but in space itself, using technologies developed specifically for the void's unique properties. Dr. Sarah Okafor made the first breakthrough in the 20th year. Working in a laboratory built inside a spatial distortion field, she discovered how to harness void energy for faster-than-light travel without using traditional jump drives. Her ships could slip between dimensions, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. By the 25th year, humanity had not just survived in the void between, they had thrived. Children born in the strange energies of deep space showed abilities that normal humans did not possess. They could sense spatial distortions instinctively, navigate by feel through regions where instruments failed, and somehow remain healthy in environments that should have been lethal. President Walsh, now an old woman, stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, humanity's capital in exile. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see dozens of ships moving through space in patterns that would have been impossible anywhere else in the galaxy. "The Council expects us to return in 5 years as broken supplicants," she said to Admiral Chun, who had grown gray in service to his people. "Begging for mercy and promising to accept whatever scraps they offer us." Chun smiled grimly. "They're going to be very surprised." Walsh nodded, thinking of Elena Vasquez's final message before the old ambassador had died 3 years earlier. "Remember," Elena had said, "they did not exile us to punish us. They exiled us because they feared what we might become. It is time to show them their fears were justified." As the 28th year of exile began, humanity was no longer the same species that had been driven from the galaxy. They had become something new, something adapted to conditions no other species could survive. They had built a civilization. In the darkness that operated on principles the Galactic Council could not comprehend. And soon, very soon, it would be time to go home. Captain Marcus Rivera had never seen normal space. Born in the 21st year of exile aboard the colony ship New Horizon, he had grown up breathing recycled air under artificial lights, learning to walk in the strange gravity fields that existed between dimensions. Now, at 26 years old, he commanded the UES Phantom Strike, a ship that could exist in 3 different phases of reality at the same time. Marcus stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display show impossible things. His ship was currently phased halfway between normal space and the void dimension, invisible to conventional sensors but able to observe everything around them. Through the viewport, space looked wrong in ways that would drive normal humans insane. Stars existed as spirals of light that bent through angles that should not exist. Reality itself seemed to breathe. "Contact bearing 27 Mark 15, reported Lieutenant Amy Jo, his sensor officer. Like Marcus, she had been born in the void and could navigate by instincts that older humans found disturbing. "Configuration matches Galactic Council scout vessel." Marcus smiled coldly. This was the 3rd Council ship to enter the void in the past month. The galactic powers were finally getting curious about what had happened to humanity. Range? 40,000 kilometers in closing. "They are scanning for signs of human habitation." "Let them scan," Marcus said. "Helm, bring us to full phase. I want to give them something interesting to look at." The Phantom Strike shifted deeper into the void dimension. To the Council ship's sensors, it would appear as if the vessel had simply vanished from existence. But Marcus could still see everything, still track every movement of the enemy vessel. The Council ship was a sleek Nexari design, built for deep space exploration. Marcus had studied the technical specifications during his academy training at New Geneva Station. Fast, well-armed, and equipped with the best sensors the Council could build. Unfortunately for them, their technology was designed for normal space. "Sir, they are launching probe drones," Joe reported. "Standard search pattern. They are looking for debris fields or abandoned colonies." Marcus activated the ship's communication system. "All stations, prepare for Contact Protocol 7. We are going to give our visitors a proper welcome." The Phantom Strike began to phase back toward normal space, but not completely. Marcus had learned to surf the boundary between dimensions, existing just enough in each reality to use the advantages of both. It was a skill that only void-born humans seemed able to master. "Contact the other ships in our patrol group," Marcus ordered. "Tell them to maintain Phase 7 and converge on our position. Time for a demonstration." 3 more human vessels shimmered into partial existence around the Council ship. The Wraith Runner, commanded by Captain Lisa Park, the Shadow Walker, under Captain David Kim, the Void Dancer, led by Captain Sarah Chun, all of them void-born. All of them commanding ships that operated on principles the Galactic Council had. Never imagined. Inside the Nexari scout ship, alarms began screaming. Captain Zektar, a veteran explorer with 50 years of deep space experience, stared at his sensor displays in disbelief. 4 ships had appeared from nowhere, surrounding his vessel in a perfect formation. "Impossible," Zektar hissed through his translator. "No ships can hide from our sensors at this range." His communications officer, a younger Nexari named Viltar, worked frantically at his console. "Sir, I am receiving a transmission from the lead vessel. Audio only. Put it through." Marcus Rivera's voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect galactic standard with just a hint of amusement. "Nexari vessel. This is Captain Rivera of the United Earthship Phantom Strike. You are trespassing in sovereign territory." Zektar's 4 eyes narrowed. "Human, you are in violation of the exile decree. Your species was ordered to remain beyond the galactic rim." "We are beyond the rim," Marcus replied. "This is our space now. You are the ones who do not belong here. The void between belongs to no one. It is empty space, worthless and uninhabitable." Marcus laughed, and the sound sent chills through the Nexari crew. "Empty? Captain Zektar, you clearly have not been paying attention. Would you like a tour?" Before Zektar could respond, the human ships began to move in patterns that violated everything he knew about physics. They flickered in and out of existence, appearing at different locations without crossing the space between. One vessel seemed to split into 3 copies of itself before merging back into one. "What are you?" Zektar whispered. "We are what you made us," Marcus answered. "When you drove us into the darkness, you expected us to die. Instead, we learned to live in places where life should be impossible. We became something new." The Phantom Strike moved closer to the Nexari vessel, and Zektar could see it more clearly through his viewports. The ship looked wrong. Its hull seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, creating optical illusions that hurt to look at directly. Strange energies crackled along its surface, energies that followed no known scientific principles. "Your ship," Zektar said. "How does it function?" "Void technology," Marcus explained. "We learned to harness the energies that exist between realities. Our ships do not fight against the strange physics of this region, they embrace it." Suddenly, new contacts appeared on the Nexari sensors, dozens of them, then hundreds. Ships of every size and configuration, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts, all phasing into partial visibility around the Council vessel. "Behold the Phantom Fleet," Marcus said. "One of 7 such fleets that patrol our territory. We have grown quite numerous in our exile, Captain Zektar." The Nexari captain stared at the displays showing more ships than his entire exploration. "Fleet contained. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated human extinction within the first decade." "Your intelligence was wrong. We did not die in the void, Captain. We evolved." At that moment, something else appeared on the Nexari sensors. Something that made Zektar's blood run cold. A massive space station, easily 10 kilometers across, shimmering into existence like a mirage becoming real. Welcome to Gateway Station. Marcus said, one of our smaller outposts. Would you like to meet some of our friends? The space station bristled with weapons that looked nothing like standard galactic designs. But more disturbing were the other ships docked at its ports. Sleek vessels with hull configurations that belonged to no known galactic species. Those ships, Zektar said slowly. They are not human. No, they are not. Captain Zektar, meet the forgotten. Races that your precious council exiled long before they ever heard of humanity. We found them here in the void, and they found us. Turns out we have quite a lot in common. A new voice joined the communication channel, speaking in harmonics that no known species used. The translation came through in perfect galactic standard. Greetings, Council Representative. I am Harmony of the Deep Void of the Ethereal Collective. We have been waiting a very long time for this moment. Zektar's translator struggled with the alien speech patterns. Ethereal Collective? That designation does not exist in our records. Because you destroyed our records, the alien voice replied, and now it carried undertones of ancient anger. Just as you destroyed the records of the Quantum Singers, the Starshapers, and dozens of other species you deemed too dangerous to exist in your ordered galaxy. Marcus Rivera's voice returned. The void between is not empty, Captain Zektar. It is full of everyone your council has tried to erase from history. Turns out that when you exile entire civilizations, they tend to find each other. More ships appeared. Vessels with crystalline hulls that bent light in impossible ways. Living ships that pulsed with organic energy, machines that existed partially outside normal time. Each design was completely alien, representing technologies that the current Galactic Council had never encountered. How many? Zektar asked weakly. How many species? How many ships? How many people? Marcus chuckled. Enough, Captain. More than enough. An elderly human woman appeared on the Nexari view screen. Her hair was silver white, her skin marked by age, but her eyes burned with fierce intelligence. Captain Zektar, I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, Supreme Commander of the Alliance of the Exiled. Yes, I am still alive. Void energies have interesting effects on human aging. Zektar remembered that name from his briefings. The ambassador who had defied the council 30 years ago. You should be dead? I should be many things, Elena replied. But I am here, and so are 3 billion humans who have spent 30 years learning to thrive in conditions that would kill your people in minutes. Along with our friends, we represent the largest military force in galactic history. What do you want? Zektar asked. Justice, Elena said simply. For 30 years we have built a new civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. Species helping each other instead of maintaining rigid hierarchies. We have proven that your way is not the only way. She gestured toward the assembled fleet. Every ship you see represents a choice, Captain. We could have used our new technologies to wage war on the galaxy. We could have returned as conquerors, taking by force what was denied to us by law. Instead, we chose to wait. Wait for what? For you to come to us. For the Council to send scouts to see what became of the humans they tried to eliminate. Now you have seen. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Zektar looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. They were outnumbered by impossible odds, surrounded by technologies they did not understand. Faced with evidence that everything they believed about galactic order was wrong. I must report this to the Council, he said. Must you? Marcus Rivera asked. Your ship's communication array has been experiencing technical difficulties since you entered our space. Very unfortunate. It may take months to repair. Zektar checked his communications board. Dead. Completely dead. You are holding us prisoner. We are offering you a choice, Elena said. Return to the Council with news of our existence, and they will respond with fear and violence. They will mobilize their fleets and march against us, believing they can crush what they failed to destroy the first time. She paused, letting that sink in. Or you could stay. Learn about what we have built here. See for yourself that we are not the monsters your council believes us to be. Become an ambassador instead of a spy. And if I refuse? Elena's expression did not change. Then you will be returned to council space with your ship's memory banks intact but empty. You will remember entering the void between, and you will remember leaving it. Everything in between will be gone. That is impossible. Captain Zektar, you have seen our ships exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. You have witnessed us appear and disappear at will. You have met species that your council claims never existed. At this point, what do you consider impossible? Zektar was quiet for a long moment, studying the alien fleet surrounding his vessel. Hundreds of ships representing technologies beyond his comprehension, commanded by species that should have been extinct, led by humans who should have died decades ago. If I stay, he said slowly, what would you show me? Everything, Elena replied. Our cities built in the spaces between stars. Our factories that turn void energy into matter. Our schools where human children learn alongside beings your council has tried to erase from history. Our laboratories where we develop technologies that could revolutionize the galaxy. Marcus Rivera added, you would see what happens when cooperation replaces competition. When different species work together instead of maintaining artificial barriers. When progress is driven by curiosity instead of controlled by fear. And when you return to the galaxy. Zektar asked. Elena smiled, and for the first time it was not entirely pleasant. When we return, Captain, the Council will face the same choice we are offering you. Join us willingly, or learn that their age of domination is over. The Nexari captain looked at his crew, then at the impossible fleet surrounding his ship. How long do I have to decide? Take all the time you need, Elena said. Time moves differently here. We have learned to be patient. As Zektar considered his options, he did not know that his was not the first council ship to enter the void in recent years. 17 other vessels had made the same journey. Some had returned empty-handed, their crews reporting nothing but empty space and navigational hazards. Others had never returned at all. The few that had encountered humanity's forces faced the same choice now offered to Zektar. Most had chosen to stay, becoming the first non-human members of what Elena called the Alliance of the Exiled, but a few had returned to council space, their memories carefully edited, carrying reports that the void between remained empty and lifeless. The council continued to believe that the human problem had solved itself through natural extinction. They would continue believing that until the day Elena Vasquez decided it was time to remind the galaxy that humanity was very much alive and growing stronger every day. The Nexari hegemon sat in his crystal throne, watching the holographic displays that showed the heart of galactic civilization. From his palace on the capital world of Nexus Prime, he could observe the activities of 1,000 worlds, track the movements of merchant fleets, and monitor the communications of billions of beings across the galaxy for the past 5 years. Those displays have been showing disturbing patterns, ships vanishing without trace. Entire space stations going silent, mining operations in remote systems simply disappearing, leaving behind empty space where thriving facilities had existed for decades. Status report, the hegemon commanded, his metallic voice echoing through the throne chamber. His aide, a nervous Altarian named Crystal Song of Worry, shimmered with anxious colors as she consulted her data tablet. 17 more incidents. This month, your dominance? The pattern continues to spread inward from the Rim territories. Theories? The military council believes it may be organized piracy. Perhaps one of the younger species has developed new stealth technology. The hegemon's red eyes dimmed with displeasure. Impossible. No younger species possesses technology we cannot detect. Our sensor networks cover every system in the galaxy. Crystal Song of Worry's colors shifted to deeper blues of uncertainty. There is another possibility, your dominance. Admiral Blackclaw of Victory suggests these incidents may be connected to the human exile. The humans are extinct, the hegemon said firmly. Our scout reports confirmed this years ago. The void between consumed them as we predicted. Yes, your dominance, but the timeline is concerning. The disappearances began approximately 2 years ago, exactly 28 years after the exile decree. The hegemon was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Coincidence. The humans were a young species with primitive technology. Even if some survived, they lacked the capability to threaten galactic shipping. An alert chime interrupted their conversation. Crystal Song of Worry checked her tablet, and her crystalline form flashed brilliant red with alarm. Your dominance. Emergency transmission from the council chambers. All 12 representatives are requested immediately. The hegemon rose from his throne, his massive spider-like form unfolding to its full height. Nature of the emergency? Unknown. Your dominance. The message simply states, Priority Omega, immediate assembly required. Within an hour, all 12 members of the Galactic Council had gathered in the same crystal chamber, where they had pronounced humanity's exile 30 years earlier. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the nervous energy of beings who had grown comfortable with absolute power, suddenly facing the unknown. The Volder representative spoke first, its tentacles writhing with agitation. The disappearances are accelerating. In the past week, we have lost contact with 3 major industrial systems. Not just lost contact, added the Korthic delegate, its scales shifting to warning colors. The systems have been completely stripped. Every ship, every station, every piece of infrastructure simply gone. The Zephyrian Council members' mental voice cut through their thoughts, colder than usual. We have also detected unusual energy signatures near several of the affected systems. Readings that match no known technology in our databases. The hegemon settled into his seat, his red eyes scanning his fellow council members. You suspect the humans. We know it is the humans, said a new voice. Every head turned toward the chamber's entrance. Walking through the massive doors came a figure that should have been impossible. Elena Vasquez, now appearing to be in her 40s despite being well. Over 90 years old, strode into the chamber wearing a uniform that seemed to absorb light itself. She was not alone. Behind her walked representatives of a dozen species, some familiar from ancient records, others completely unknown. They moved with confidence through a chamber designed to intimidate, their eyes showing no fear of the beings who had once ruled their fates. Impossible, the hegemon whispered. You are dead. All of you are dead. Elena smiled as she took her position in the center of the chamber, exactly where she had stood 30 years before. Death, honored hegemon, is a matter of perspective. We have simply been ... elsewhere. The Altarian representative chimed in harmonic discord. The exile decree specifically forbade your return to galactic space. And we are not violating that decree, Elena replied calmly. We remain citizens of the void between. This is merely a diplomatic visit. One of the beings with Elena stepped forward. It appeared to be made of living energy, constantly shifting between states of matter. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I am Starsinger in the Deep, representative of the Ethereal Collective. We were the first species you exiled over 8,000 years ago. We have been waiting a very long time for this conversation. The Korthic delegate hissed in recognition. The Ethereals, but you were eliminated, completely destroyed. Exiled, Starsinger corrected, like the Quantum Shapers, like the Time Dancers, like the Dreamweavers, like dozens of other species over the millennia. We were not destroyed. We were sent to the void between, where we learned to survive in conditions you believed were impossible. Elena gestured to the assembled representatives. Meet the alliance of the exiled. Every species your council has tried to erase from history over the past 10,000 years. It turns out that when you throw away your problems, they sometimes find each other. The Zephyrian's mental voice was sharp with fear. What do you want? Justice, Elena said simply. For 10,000 years, this council has maintained power through fear and exclusion. Any species that grew too quickly, questioned too loudly, or developed in ways you found uncomfortable was labeled dangerous and removed. She began walking around the chamber, her voice carrying clearly to every corner. You told yourselves it was for galactic stability, for the greater good. You convinced yourselves that exile was mercy compared to extermination. It was mercy, the hegemon protested. We could have destroyed you all. Elena stopped walking and fixed him with a stare that made the ancient being uncomfortable. Could you, really? Or did you exile us because deep down you knew that direct conflict might not go as easily as you assumed? A new figure materialized in the chamber, seeming to step out of empty air itself. Captain Marcus Rivera, now wearing the insignia of a fleet admiral, appeared beside Elena with the casual ease of someone who had mastered technologies beyond galactic understanding. Admiral Rivera, Elena said by way of introduction. Born in exile, raised in the void, commander of our Phantom fleets. Would you care to share our current capabilities? Marcus activated a small device on his wrist. Instantly, the chamber's crystal walls became transparent, revealing the space around Nexus Prime. The council members gasped in shock at what they saw. Ships, thousands upon thousands of ships, surrounding the capital world in perfect formation. But these were not the primitive vessels the council remembered from 30 years ago. These ships seemed to exist partially outside normal space, their hulls shimmering with energies that hurt to look at directly. The First Armada, Marcus said conversationally. One of 7 such fleets currently positioned around key council worlds. We have been watching you for some time. The Volta representative's patterns flashed in panic. Our sensors show nothing. How are you hiding so many ships? We are not hiding, Marcus replied. We are simply existing in dimensional phases your technology cannot detect. We learned many things in the void between. Elena continued her circuit of the chamber. Your disappearing ships and stations, we have been relocating them. The crews are safe and well cared for in our dimensional facilities. The equipment and resources are being redistributed to species you have kept in artificial poverty. That is theft, the Altarian chimed angrily. Is it? Elena asked. When you exile entire civilizations, do they not have the right to reclaim what was taken from them? When you deny younger species the resources to develop, are they not justified in seeking those resources elsewhere? Starsinger in the deep moved closer to the council seats, its energy form crackling with barely contained power. For 8,000 years, we have watched you hoard technology and knowledge. You speak of maintaining order, but you have created a galaxy of artificial scarcity and enforced ignorance. The council maintains stability, the hegemon insisted, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. The council maintains control, Elena corrected. There is a difference. Stability comes from cooperation and growth. Control comes from fear and limitation. Marcus activated his device again. This time, the display showed star charts of the entire galaxy. Dozens of systems were highlighted in blue, indicating human and Alliance presence. We have been very busy during our exile, he said. Those hidden bases we established before our departure? They have been active for 30 years, gathering intelligence, making contact with oppressed species, and preparing infrastructure for our return. Elena gestured to the display. Every blue dot represents a system where the local population has chosen to join our alliance. Species that were being held back by council restrictions have embraced the opportunity to develop freely. You are fomenting rebellion, the Korthek delegate accused. We are offering choice, Elena replied. Something your council has never done. We arrive at a world and make a simple proposal. Continue under council rule with its limitations and restrictions, or join our alliance and receive access to technologies and resources that could transform your civilization. Starsinger added, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. It seems most species prefer freedom to security. The Zephyrian's mental voice was filled with rage. You cannot simply overturn 10,000 years of galactic order. We are not overturning anything, Elena said. We are offering an alternative. Competition, if you will. Let the species of the galaxy choose for themselves which system they prefer. The hegemon's red eyes flared brighter. And if we refuse to allow this competition? Elena's smile became dangerous. Then you will discover why we spent 30 years preparing for this moment instead of simply attacking when we first developed the capability. Marcus gestured to his wrist device again. The display shifted to show massive installations in deep space, structures that dwarfed even the Council's largest space stations. Void-forged stations, he explained. We can manufacture anything we need using dimensional energy. Our industrial capacity now exceeds that of the entire Galactic Council by a factor of 10. Another gesture showed fleets of ships unlike anything in Council databases. Our military technology operates on principles your scientists cannot comprehend. We do not fight your kind of war. What kind of war do you fight? The Volter asked fearfully. Elena answered, the kind where your weapons simply stop working. Where your ships find themselves transported to locations of our choosing. Where your communications networks suddenly start broadcasting our messages instead of yours. She paused, letting that sink in. We have had 30 years to study Council technology and develop countermeasures. Your entire military infrastructure is based on principles we now consider obsolete. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of crystal harmonics and the nervous sounds of various alien physiologies under stress. What are your terms? The hegemon asked finally. Elena's expression softened slightly. Dissolution of the Galactic Council as a governing body. Establishment of a new democratic federation where all species have equal representation regardless of age or technological development. Open sharing of scientific knowledge and resources. An amnesty for all species currently in exile. Impossible, the Altarian chimed. Such changes would destabilize everything we have built. Everything you have built is already destabilized, Elena pointed out. The question is whether the transition happens peacefully or violently. Marcus checked a display on his wrist. Admiral, we have reports of Council fleets mobilizing in 17 systems, Elena nodded. Expected. Honored Council members, you have 48 hours to consider our terms. After that, we will assume you have chosen the path of resistance. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and do not waste time trying to mobilize your secret weapons or contingency fleets. We have been monitoring your activities for decades. Every military asset you possess is already under our observation. As Elena and her representatives walked toward the chamber exit, the hegemon called after them. You are making a mistake, human. We have resources and allies you cannot imagine. Elena stopped and looked back over her shoulder. Your dominance. We are those resources and allies. Everyone you ever exiled, everyone you ever oppressed, everyone you ever told they were not good enough to participate in galactic civilization. We are all here, and we are united. This is war, the hegemon declared. Elena's final words echoed through the chamber as she disappeared. No, your dominance. This is evolution. As the chamber doors closed behind the Alliance representatives, the 12 council members sat in stunned silence. Outside their crystal walls, thousands of impossible ships waited in the darkness, carrying technologies that defied everything they thought they knew about the universe. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. The age of the Alliance of the Exiled had begun. Admiral Chen Zhao, now in his 70s but still sharp as a blade, stood on the command deck of the UES New Geneva as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. 46 hours had passed since Elena's ultimatum to the Galactic Council. 2 hours remained before the deadline expired. Status from all sectors, Chun requested. His weathered hands clasped behind his back. Commander Sarah Kim, his longtime aide who had grown gray in service alongside him, consulted her displays. The Council has mobilized every fleet they possess. Conservative estimate, 1.2 million warships converging on 17 strategic positions. She nodded grimly. They chose the path of war. I had hoped they might show wisdom, but old habits die hard. Fleet Admiral Rivera reports the Phantom Armadas are in position at all 17 convergence points. Kim continued. The Ethereal Collective confirms their reality bender squadrons are ready. The Quantum Shapers have their probability alteration fields active. Chen turned to look out the viewport at the assembled might of the Alliance of the Exiled. Ships from 100 different species, representing technologies developed in isolation over thousands of years. Each vessel was a masterpiece of adaptive engineering, designed to survive in conditions that would destroy conventional spacecraft. And the Council worlds themselves? Admiral Vasquez reports that population centers on all 12 home worlds are being continuously monitored. Civilian evacuation protocols are standing by in case the Council attempts scorched earth tactics. Chun touched a control on his command chair. Open channel to all fleet commanders. The main display activated, showing dozens of faces, both human and alien. Marcus Rivera's youthful features appeared alongside Starsinger in the deep shifting energy form. Captain Maria Santos, now commanding a dimensional fortress, shared screen space with Harmony of the Void from the Ethereal Collective. Friends, Chen began, his voice carrying the authority of decades in command. In 2 hours, the Council's deadline expires. They have chosen to respond with force rather than negotiation. Are all units prepared for Operation Metamorphosis? A chorus of confirmations came back in dozens of languages, translated instantly by advanced AI systems developed in the void between. Marcus Rivera leaned forward. Admiral, the first Phantom Armada is tracking the largest Council fleet. 800,000 ships approaching the Nexus Prime system. They believe they can overwhelm us through sheer numbers. Let them believe that, Chung replied. Sometimes the most powerful lesson is learned through gentle demonstration rather than harsh punishment. Starsinger in the Deep's voice resonated across the communication channel. The Ethereal Collective has prepared probability cascades for all major engagement zones. Council weapons will find themselves unreliable, Chun nodded. Remember, our goal is not destruction, our goal is transformation. We want to prove that our way is better, not that we are stronger. At that moment, alerts began sounding across the New Geneva's bridge. Kim checked her sensors and looked up with surprise. Admiral, we have an incoming transmission. It's from the Nexari hegemon himself? Chun raised an eyebrow. Put it through. The command display shifted to show the Nexari hegemon in his crystal throne chamber. The ancient being looked older somehow. His red eyes dimmed with exhaustion. Admiral Chun, the hegemon said, his metallic voice carrying undertones of defeat. I wish to speak with Elena Vasquez. I am here, Your Dominance. Elena stepped into view of the camera, her appearance unchanged despite the passage of time. The void energies that sustained her had given her a timeless quality that made her age impossible to determine. The Council has reached a decision. The hegemon continued. We will mobilize our full military might to destroy your alliance. This cannot be allowed to continue. Elena's expression remained calm. That is your choice to make. But before you commit to this path, allow me to show you something. She gestured to someone off camera. The transmission split, showing both Elena and a tactical display of the galaxy. Observe, Elena said. Every blue dot represents a system that has voluntarily joined our alliance in the past 48 hours. Every red dot represents a system still under Council control. The hegemon stared at the display in growing horror. The galaxy was now more blue than red. Hundreds of worlds had declared their independence from Council rule and requested alliance protection. Impossible, the hegemon whispered. Those worlds have been loyal for millennia. Loyalty based on fear is not loyalty, Elena replied. When we offered them genuine choice, they chose freedom. The display zoomed in on specific systems. The mining worlds of the outer spiral have voted unanimously to join us. The agricultural colonies of the Centauri cluster have requested immediate alliance membership. Even the industrial core worlds of the inner ring are reconsidering their allegiances. You are using some form of mind control? The hegemon accused. Elena laughed. The only thing we offered was hope. Hope for advancement without restriction. Hope for growth without permission. Hope for futures determined by merit rather than birth. Marcus Rivera appeared on the transmission. Your Dominance, Perhaps you would like to see what your great fleet is facing. The display shifted to show the Council's massive armada approaching one of the convergence points. 800,000 ships in perfect formation, representing the accumulated military might of galactic civilization. Impressive, Marcus said. Our response? The view pulled back to reveal the space around the Council fleet. Where there had been empty void moments before, ships began phasing into visibility. Not hundreds or thousands, but hundreds of thousands. Ships that flickered between dimensions. Vessels that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. Craft that moved through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. The Phantom Armadas represent only a fraction of our military capability, Marcus explained. But numbers are not really the point. As the hegemon watched, something impossible happened to his great fleet. The Council ships simply stopped. They hung motionless in space, their engines still functioning but producing no movement, their weapons powered but unable to fire. Temporal stasis fields, Marcus said conversationally. A gift from the Time Dancers, one of the species you exiled 6,000 years ago. Your ships are now experiencing time at a rate of 1 second per hour. Your crews are perfectly safe, just moving very, very slowly. The hegemon's red eyes flared with rage. Release them immediately. Certainly, Elena replied. As soon as you recall all Council fleets and agree to negotiations. This is not war, the hegemon protested. This is humiliation. This is mercy, Elena corrected. War would involve the destruction of your fleets. Humiliation would involve broadcasting images of your helplessness across the galaxy. This is simply a demonstration that your old methods no longer work. Starsinger in the Deep's voice joined the conversation. Honored Hegemon, the Ethereal Collective has a message for you. We have spent 8,000 years in exile, developing technologies that operate outside your understanding of reality. Every weapon system you possess, every defensive measure you have developed, every strategic doctrine you follow, we know them all because we helped create them. The energy being paused, its form shifting to brighter patterns. You exiled your greatest minds, your most innovative spirits, your most creative thinkers. Did you really believe that would make you stronger? Elena gestured again, and the display showed Council fleets and 16 other systems, all frozen in the same temporal stasis fields. 1.2 million ships, she said. The largest military force in galactic history. Completely neutralized without firing a single shot. The hegemon was quiet for a long moment, processing the scope of his defeat. What happens now? Now we do what we came to do, Elena replied. Transform the galaxy into something better than what it was. She activated another display, showing a detailed proposal document, the Alliance Charter, a new form of galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. Every species gets representation proportional to their population, not their age or military strength. Scientific knowledge is shared freely. Resources are distributed based on need rather than political favor. The younger species will destroy everything, the hegemon protested weakly. The younger species will build everything, Elena corrected, including things you never imagined possible. Marcus Rivera added, we have already begun implementation in alliance systems. Agricultural output has increased by 300% using shared farming techniques. Industrial efficiency has doubled through technology transfers. Medical advances have eliminated 17 previously incurable diseases. Elena's expression softened slightly. Your dominance. The Council species are not our enemies. You are. Our teachers, our predecessors, the foundation upon which we build. We do not seek to destroy what you created. We seek to make it better. The hegemon looked around his throne chamber at the crystal walls that had symbolized unchanging power for millennia. And if we refuse to participate in this transformation, then you will be free to maintain your current systems within your own territory, Elena replied. But you will no longer be able to impose those systems on others. She gestured to the galactic display. The universe is vast, your dominance. There is room for multiple approaches to civilization. Our way is not the only way, but it is no longer going to be hidden or suppressed. At that moment, new figures appeared in the hegemon's throne chamber. The other 11 council members, looking defeated and uncertain. The Altarian representative's crystalline form was dim with resignation. The Voltor delegate's tentacles hung limp with exhaustion. "We have been in emergency session," the Korthic representative said, its scales a dull gray of surrender. "The reports from our military commanders are disturbing. Our weapons do not function," the Zephyrian added, its mental voice heavy with bewilderment. "Our ships cannot move. Our communication systems broadcast your messages instead of ours." Elena nodded. "The transition can be as smooth or as difficult as you choose to make it, but the transition will happen." The Voltor delegate spoke up. "What guarantees do we have that you will honor the terms you propose?" "The same guarantee you gave to the species you exiled," Elena replied. "None but our word. The difference is that our word has never been broken." Starsinger, the Deep, moved into view of the transmission. "The Alliance of the Exiled offers something the Council never has: genuine partnership. Our strength comes from diversity, not uniformity. From cooperation, not domination." The hegemon looked at his fellow council members, seeing in their alien faces the same exhaustion and defeat he felt in his own ancient bones. "If we agree to these terms," he said slowly, "what happens to us? To the Council? You become founding members of the new Galactic Federation," Elena replied. "Your experience and wisdom will be valued but not automatically deferred to. Your voices will be heard but not given automatic authority." Marcus Rivera added, "The Council worlds will retain full autonomy over their internal affairs. But you will no longer dictate policy for species that choose different paths." Elena stepped closer to the camera. "Your dominance. 30 years ago you exiled us because you feared what we might become. Today you have seen what we became. The question now is, what will you become?" The hegemon was quiet for a very long time. Around the galaxy, frozen fleets waited in temporal stasis. Billions of beings watched broadcasts of the historic negotiation. The future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. "I am tired," the hegemon said finally. "Tired of maintaining control through fear. Tired of making decisions for species I do not understand. Tired of pretending that our way is the only way." He looked directly at Elena through the transmission. "Perhaps it is time for something new." One by one, the other council members voiced their agreement. Not enthusiastic endorsement, but weary acceptance that their age of absolute power was ending. Elena smiled, and for the first time it was entirely warm and welcoming. "Then let us begin building the future together." 6 months later, Elena. Vasquez stood once again in the crystal chamber where humanity had been exiled 30 years before. But now the chamber was filled with representatives from over 300 species. The 12 ancient council seats had been replaced with a circular arrangement where no position held automatic precedence. The Galactic Federation's first assembly was about to begin. Young species sat beside ancient ones. Exiled civilizations shared space with former oppressors. The void-born humans worked alongside beings who had never left their home systems. Marcus Rivera, now the Federation's first elected military coordinator, approached Elena as she prepared for the opening ceremony. "Any regrets?" he asked. Elena looked around the transformed chamber, remembering the loneliness and defiance she had felt standing here 3 decades ago. Only that it took so long. Outside the station, ships from 100 different cultures moved in organized patterns, heading to systems that needed aid, carrying technology and hope to worlds that had waited centuries for the chance to grow. The age of exile was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And in the depths of the void between, where it all started, new explorers ventured into the darkness, no longer driven by desperation but by curiosity, carrying the banner of a galaxy united not by fear but by the endless human dream of something better.
Commander Vexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. The massive ship was over 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Around him, 200 other warships moved in perfect formation through the darkness of space. The Kethavari 7th Battle Fleet was the pride of the Dominion, and Vexithal was its master. The Kethavari had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 500 years. Their gray skin was tough as armor. Their forearms could work controls faster than any other species, and their warrior culture had never known defeat. They had conquered 47 different worlds and enslaved dozens of alien races. Every species in 3 sectors knew to fear the sight of Kethavari warships. "Sir, we have a contact on long-range sensors," called Navigation Officer Keftar from his station. His voice carried the usual confidence of a warrior who had never faced a real threat. Vexthal turned his large head toward the sensor station. His black eyes reflected the blue glow of the displays. "What kind of contact?" "Unknown vessel, sir. Single ship, roughly frigate class. Distance is at the edge of our scanning range." Keftar's 4 hands moved across his controls, bringing up more information. "The design doesn't match anything in our database. Probably some merchant vessel that got lost," said Weapons Officer Drexvin with a laugh. "Or maybe pirates stupid enough to think they can hide from us." Vexthal walked over to look at the sensor display himself. The unknown ship appeared as a small dot on the screen, much smaller than even his escort vessels. "What's their course?" "They're not moving, sir. Just sitting there in space." "But..." Keftar paused, his expression showing confusion. "There's something odd about the energy readings." "Odd how?" "The power signature is unlike anything I've seen before. It's not very strong, but it's different. The patterns don't make sense. And sir, they're transmitting something." "Put it through the speakers." The bridge filled with the sound of static, then a clear voice speaking in a language their computers quickly translated. The voice belonged to a female, and she sounded completely calm despite being surrounded by 200 warships. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiant. You are in violation of the Terran Accords. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." The entire bridge crew burst into laughter. Drexvin was laughing so hard he had to hold onto his weapons console. "Terrans? Did she say Terrans?" "The humans," Keftar managed between laughs. "That backward species from the edge of the galaxy." Vexthal allowed himself a small smile. The Kethavari had heard stories about humans from traders and scouts. They were described as a young species that had barely learned to travel between stars. Their ships were primitive. Their weapons were simple, and they had never conquered anything beyond their own small corner of space. Some reports said they were so weak they couldn't even agree among themselves and fought wars on their own planet. "Sir," said Science Officer Zephia, the only crew member who wasn't laughing, "our intelligence on the humans is several decades old. Perhaps we should be cautious." Drexvin stopped laughing long enough to respond. "Cautious? It's one tiny ship against our entire fleet. What could they possibly do to us?" Vexithal studied the sensor display more carefully. The human ship was indeed small, probably carrying no more than 50 crew members. His flagship alone had a crew of 5,000, and the entire fleet carried over 500,000 Kethavari warriors. "What kind of weapons are they showing?" "That's the strange part, sir," Keftar replied. "I'm not detecting any weapons at all. No energy cannons, no missile tubes, no particle beams, nothing." "Maybe they're hidden somehow," suggested Drexvin. "Some kind of stealth technology." "Our scanners can detect stealth systems," Zephia said, quietly. "If there were weapons there, we would see them." Vexthal nodded. The Kethavari had conquered species with much more advanced technology than anything the humans were supposed to have. Their sensors could see through any known form of camouflage or shielding. If the human ship had no visible weapons, then it really had no weapons. The transmission repeated. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiant. You are in violation of the Terran Accords. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." "Should we respond, sir?" asked Communications Officer Thexmall. "Open a channel," Vexthal ordered. When the connection was established, he spoke in his most commanding voice. "Human vessel, this is Commander Vexthal of the Kethavari Dominion, 7th Battle Fleet. You are in Dominion space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The response came back almost instantly, still in that same calm voice. Commander Vexthal, you are mistaken. This system was claimed by the Terran Federation under the Outer Rim Expansion Treaty. Your presence here violates that treaty. I am authorized to enforce our territorial rights. More laughter erupted across the bridge. The idea that humans had territorial rights was funny enough. But the thought that one small ship could enforce anything against their massive fleet was ridiculous. Human, Vexthal said, putting extra threat into his voice. Look at your sensors. We have 200 warships. You have one small vessel with no visible weapons. Do you really think you can threaten us? There was a pause before Captain Chen responded. When she did, her voice carried a note of sadness. Commander, I strongly advise you to reconsider. My ship may look small to you, but appearances can be deceiving. The Terran Federation has no desire for conflict, but we will defend our territory. Your territory? Drexven called out, loud enough to be picked up by the communication system. What can one pathetic human ship do against the might of the Dominion? Another pause, longer this time. When Captain Chen spoke again, her voice was colder. Sir, I am going to assume that was not an official challenge. I will give you 30 minutes to begin withdrawing from this system. After that time, I will consider your continued presence an act of war. The laughter on the bridge became even louder. 30 minutes, as if the mighty Kethvari fleet would run away from a single human ship. Vexthal cut the communication channel and turned to his officers. Analysis. What could they possibly be planning? Zephyr checked her instruments. Sir, I'm still not detecting any weapon systems on that vessel. However, the energy readings continue to be unusual. Unusual how? The patterns don't match any known technology. The energy seems to be flowing in ways that don't make physical sense. And sir, there's something else. Our sensors keep getting small errors when they scan that ship. Nothing major, just tiny inconsistencies that correct themselves almost immediately. Vexthal frowned. Kethvari sensors were the best in the galaxy. They didn't make errors. Could it be some kind of jamming system? No, sir. Not jamming. More like reality. Keeps changing its mind about what that ship actually is. Drexven rolled his eyes. Reality doesn't change its mind, Zephyr. Check your equipment. I've run full diagnostics 3 times, sir. All systems are working perfectly. Vexthal looked at the tactical display showing his fleet's formation. 200 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts, 30 heavy cruisers, and over 100 smaller vessels. Each ship was crewed by experienced warriors and armed with weapons that could crack moons. The idea that one human ship could threaten them was beyond ridiculous. Sir, Keftar spoke up, should we move closer? Get a better scan of their vessel? Maintain current distance for now, Vexthal decided. Send a fighter squadron to get a closer look. I want to know what we're dealing with before we make any moves. Launching Gold Squadron, Drexven announced. 12 Kethvari fighters shot out from the launch bays of the nearest carrier. The small, fast ships were designed for reconnaissance and light combat. Their pilots were among the best in the fleet. As the fighters moved toward the human ship, Vexthal watched the sensor displays carefully. The Defiant remained completely motionless, showing no reaction to the approaching fighters. No weapons powered up, no defensive systems activated, no attempt to escape. Maybe they're dead, suggested Thexmol. Engine failure or something. They responded to our communications just minutes ago, Zephyr pointed out. Then maybe they're just stupid, Drexven said with a grin. Vexthal said nothing, but something about this situation bothered him. In 500 years of conquest, the Kethvari had learned that most species reacted predictably when faced with overwhelming force. They either surrendered immediately or tried to run away. A few brave species would power up their weapons and prepare to fight, knowing they would lose but determined to die with honor. The humans were doing none of these things. They just sat there in space, waiting. Gold Squadron report, Drexven called over the communication system. Gold Leader here, came the response from the squadron commander. Approaching target, Fessel now. Getting some strange readings on our instruments, but nothing serious. The human ship appears to be completely defenseless. Any response from them? Negative, sir. They're not even trying to communicate with us. Vexthal nodded. This was more normal behavior. When faced with military aircraft approaching their position, most species would at least try to talk. The fact that the humans weren't responding suggested they might actually be having technical problems. Gold Leader, move in for a detailed scan, Vexthal ordered. I want to know everything about that ship. Copy that, sir. Moving to close range now. On the tactical display, the 12 fighters formed up and approached the human vessel. At this distance, their sensors should be able to see inside the ship and identify exactly what kind of threat it represented. Sir, Gold Leader's voice came back, but now it sounded confused. We're getting some very odd readings here. The ship appears to be... I'm not sure how to describe it. It looks different depending on which angle we view it from. Explain, Vexthal ordered. From one side, it looks like a standard frigate. From another angle, it appears much larger. And sir, our targeting computers keep losing luck. They can't seem to decide what they're supposed to be aiming at. Zephyr looked up from her science station, her face showing concern. Sir, I'm detecting the same anomalies from here. That ship is showing impossible sensor readings. There's no such thing as impossible sensor readings, Drexfin said firmly. Either something is there or it isn't. In this case, sir, it appears to be both. Vexthal felt the first small touch of unease. The Kethvari had faced many different technologies in their centuries of conquest, but they had never encountered anything that could confuse their sensors like this. Gold Leader, maintain distance and continue scanning, he ordered. But before Gold Leader could respond, Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge again. This time, she wasn't using their communication system. Her words seemed to come from everywhere, at once as if she were standing right there among them. Commander Vexthal, your fighters are approaching too close to my vessel. I strongly advise you to recall them immediately. Drexfin looked around the bridge in confusion. How is she doing that? We didn't open a channel. Thexmol was frantically checking his communications equipment. Sir, all our channels are closed. I don't know how she's transmitting to us. Vexthal felt his unease growing stronger. Gold Leader, fall back to a safer distance. But Gold Leader's response was filled with panic. Sir, we're trying to pull back, but our engines won't respond. All our systems just went dead. On the tactical display, all 12 fighters had stopped moving. They were hanging in space near the human ship, completely motionless. Gold Squadron, report your status. Drexfin called urgently. Life support is working, sir, but everything else is offline. Engines, weapons, communications, even our navigation computers. It's like the ship just stopped working. Vexthal stared at the display in shock. 12 of his best fighters had been disabled without the human ship firing a single shot. In fact, according to his sensors, the Defiant still showed no weapon systems at all. How? He whispered. Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge again, still coming from everywhere and nowhere. Your pilots are safe, Commander. Their ships will be restored to full function once you begin withdrawing from this system. This is your final warning. For the first time in his military career, Commander Vexthal of the Kethvari Dominion felt something he had never experienced before. Fear of an enemy he didn't understand. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest had fallen silent. Every officer stared at the tactical display showing 12 disabled fighters floating helplessly near the human ship. The laughter from minutes before seemed like it had happened in another lifetime. Commander Vexthal gripped the railing around his command platform. His four hands were shaking slightly, though he tried to hide it from his crew. In 300 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Ships didn't just stop working. There had to be an explanation. Zephyr, he called, to his science officer. Analysis. How did they disable our fighters? The young female looked up from her instruments, her face pale. Sir, I've been scanning continuously since the fighters went dead. The human ship has not emitted any energy discharges, electromagnetic pulses, or particle beams. As far as our sensors can tell, they did absolutely nothing. That's impossible, Drexfin protested. You can't disable a ship without doing something to it. I know it's impossible, sir. But that's what happened. Vexthal walked over to the communication station. Gold Leader, can you give me more details about what happened? Gold Leader's voice came through clearly, though his ship was completely powerless. Sir, we were approaching for a closer scan when suddenly every system on my ship just turned off. Not damaged, not overloaded, just off, like someone flipped a switch. What about the other fighters? Same thing, sir. All 12 of us lost. Power at exactly the same moment. But here's the weird part. Life support kept working. The lights are on, the air is clean, temperature is perfect. It's like whatever did this to us wanted to make sure we stayed alive. That detail sent a chill through Vexthal. An enemy that could disable ships but chose to keep the crews alive was either very merciful or very confident. Neither possibility was comforting. Sir, called Keftar from the navigation station, the human ship is moving. Everyone turned to look at the main display. The Defiant was indeed moving, but not in any way they expected. Instead of turning or accelerating like a normal ship, it simply appeared in a different location. One moment it was next to the disabled fighters, the next moment it was several kilometers away. Did anyone see it move? Vexthal asked. No, sir, Keftar replied, his voice confused. It was just suddenly somewhere else. Maybe it has some kind of teleportation technology, suggested Drexven, though he sounded less confident than before. Our sensors would detect energy signatures from any known teleportation system, Zephia said. This ship continues to operate outside the laws of physics as we understand them. Vexthal made a decision. He couldn't let one mysterious ship intimidate his entire fleet, no matter how strange its technology seemed. Battle stations. All ships prepare for combat. Alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. 200 warships powered up their weapons and shields. The smaller vessels moved into attack formation, while the dreadnoughts prepared their main guns. It was enough firepower to destroy everything in the star system. Sir, Thexmol said, quietly, should we try to negotiate? Maybe we can learn more about their technology. The time for talk is over, Vexthal replied. They've disabled our fighters and refused our demands. We respond with strength. Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge again, still coming from everywhere at once. Commander, I can see your ships powering weapons. This is not wise. How are you broadcasting to us? Vexthal demanded. Does it matter? What matters is that you're about to make a terrible mistake. My government sent me here to maintain peace, not to fight. But if you force combat, I will defend this system. One ship against 200, Drexven called out. You cannot win. There was a pause before Captain Chen responded, and when she did, her voice carried a note of sadness. Victory isn't about numbers, Commander, it's about understanding, and you don't understand what you're facing. Then enlighten us, Vexthal challenged. I wish I could. But some lessons can only be learned through experience. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Vexthal looked around, at his officers. They were all experienced warriors who had faced dozens of enemy species. But he could see uncertainty in their eyes. This situation was unlike anything in their training or experience. Sir, Keftar reported, the human ship is moving again. This time, the Defiant didn't just change position. It seemed to stretch across space, becoming longer and thinner until it looked more like a line of light than a ship. Then it snapped back to normal size, but now it was moving in 3 different directions at once. That's not possible, Drexven whispered. None of this is possible, Zephia agreed. But it's happening anyway. Vexthal watched the impossible display and felt his confidence cracking. But he was a Kethavari commander and retreat was not in his nature. All ships target the human vessel. Fire when ready. Sir, Keftar said urgently, we can't get a targeting lock. The computer keeps saying the target doesn't exist. It's right there on the screen. I know, sir. But the targeting system sees something different than what we're seeing. It can't decide what it's supposed to aim at. Vexthal grabbed the manual targeting controls. Then we'll do this the old way. All ships, fire on my mark. 200 warships aimed their weapons toward the general area where the human ship was located. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and missile launchers all prepared to unleash destruction. "Fire!" Vexthal commanded. The space around the Defiant erupted. In light and energy, thousands of weapons fired at once, creating a light show that could be seen from the edge of the system. When the energy dissipated, there should have been nothing left but debris. Instead, the human ship sat unchanged in exactly the same position. Not only was it undamaged, but it didn't even look like it had been hit. There were no scorch marks, no shield flares, no signs that it had just survived the concentrated firepower of an entire fleet. "Impossible," Drexven breathed. "Sir," Zephyr called out, her voice shaking, "I'm reading something very strange. According to our sensors, all of our weapons hit the target, but they also missed completely. Both things happened at the same time. That doesn't make sense." "Nothing about this makes sense, sir." Captain Chen's voice returned, and now she sounded tired. "Commander, you've just demonstrated why violence is not the answer here. Your weapons cannot harm my ship because you don't understand the nature of reality itself." "What are you talking about?" Vexthal demanded. "Your species thinks in terms of 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. You build your weapons and your defenses based on those limitations, but reality is far more complex than that. Explain yourself." "I'm trying to, Commander. Your weapons exist in only 4 dimensions, my ship exists in several more. Your attacks simply pass through spaces where my ship isn't, even though it appears to be there from your perspective." Fia looked up from her science station, her face showing a mixture of fear and fascination. "Sir, if what she's saying is true, then they have technology that operates in higher dimensions. That would explain all the impossible sensor readings." Vexthal felt his world beginning to crumble. The Kethavari had built their empire on superior technology and tactics. But what good were superior weapons if the enemy existed in dimensions you couldn't even reach? "You're lying," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Commander, I wish I were. It would make this situation much simpler." Captain Chen paused. "I'm going to demonstrate something for you. Please observe your tactical display." Every screen on the bridge changed at once. Instead of showing the normal view of space with ships positioned in standard formation, they now showed something impossible. The Defiant appeared to be in multiple locations simultaneously. It was next to their disabled fighters near their flagship, and scattered throughout their battle formation all at the same time. "This is how I see your fleet," Captain Chen explained. "From my perspective, I'm close enough to each of your ships to reach out and touch them. Distance is just another dimension, and I can choose how much of it exists between us." "Sir," Keftar called out in panic, "our navigation systems are showing the same readings. That ship is somehow next to every vessel in our fleet at once." Vexthal stared at the displays, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human ship was everywhere and nowhere, close and far away, moving and stationary. It was as if reality itself had become unreliable. "How?" he whispered. "Your species has a long way to go before you're ready for that knowledge," Captain Chen replied. "For now, it's enough to know that the Terran Federation has learned to work with reality instead of against it." "Impossible," Drexven said again, but his voice was weak. "Commander," Captain Chen continued, "I'm going to restore your fighters to full function now. Consider it a gesture of good faith. But I need you to understand something very important. Everything you've seen so far has been me showing restraint. I have been very, very careful not to hurt anyone. If you force me to take aggressive action, the results will be far more serious than a few disabled ships." On the tactical display, the 12 fighters suddenly came back to life. Their engines restarted, their weapons powered up, and their communications came online. "Gold leader to flagship," came the relieved voice of the squadron commander. "All systems are back online. Engines are responding normally." "How do you feel?" Vexthal asked. "Fine, sir. It's like nothing ever happened. But sir, I recommend we don't go near that human ship again. Whatever they did to us, they could do it again anytime they want." Vexthal looked around his bridge at his frightened officers. These were warriors who had faced death in countless battles, but they had never faced an enemy that could rewrite reality itself. "Return to the fleet," he ordered the fighters. As Gold Squadron flew back to rejoin the main force, Vexthal tried to think of options. He couldn't attack an enemy his weapons couldn't hit. He couldn't outrun a ship that could appear anywhere it wanted to be, and he couldn't negotiate with beings who operated by completely different rules than his own species. For the first time in Kethavari history, a fleet commander faced an enemy he couldn't defeat, couldn't escape, and couldn't understand. "Captain Chen," he said finally, "what do you want from us?" "Only what I asked for in the beginning, Commander. Leave this system. Go back to your own territory. Pretend this encounter never happened." "And if we refuse?" There was a long silence before Captain Chen answered. When she did, her voice was filled with regret. "Then I'll have to show you what human weapons can actually do." Commander Vexthal stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by officers who looked to him for answers he didn't have. The human ship hung in space before them like a puzzle that couldn't be solved. Every military principle he had learned in 3 centuries of service told him to retreat, but his pride as a Kethavari warrior wouldn't let him run from a single enemy vessel. "Sir," Drexven said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal. We can return with a larger force, maybe find a way to counter their technology." Vexthal's black eyes blazed with anger. "The Kethavari do not retreat from inferior species. We are the masters of this galaxy." "But sir," Zephyr spoke up nervously, "what if they're not inferior? What if we're the ones who are outmatched here?" "Impossible," Vexthal snarled. "No. Species is more advanced than the Kethavari. These humans must be using some kind of trick, smoke and mirrors to make us think they're more powerful than they are." Deep down, he knew his words sounded hollow, but admitting the truth would mean accepting that everything the Kethavari believed about themselves was wrong. It would mean their empire, their culture, their very identity was built on a lie. "Commander," Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge again, "I can sense your internal struggle. Pride is a difficult thing to overcome, but sometimes wisdom means knowing when not to fight." "You know nothing about Kethavari pride," Vexthal shouted. "I know more than you might think. Your species has a long and proud history of conquest. You've built a great empire by defeating those who were weaker than you. But strength isn't just about having bigger weapons or more ships. Sometimes it's about knowing when to walk away. We will never walk away from a single human ship." There was a sigh that seemed to echo from every surface on the bridge. "I was afraid you would say that." The Defiant began to change. What had looked like a standard frigate started to unfold like a flower made of metal and light. Sections that should have been solid became transparent, revealing structures inside that hurt to look at directly. The ship seemed to exist in more dimensions than the Kethavari mind could process. "Sir," Keftar called out in panic, "the sensor readings are going crazy. That ship is, I don't know what it is anymore." "All ships attack formation," Vexthal commanded. "We end this now." 3 destroyer-class vessels moved forward from the main fleet. Each ship was over a kilometer long and armed with enough weapons to level a continent. If the human ship could somehow avoid energy weapons, maybe concentrated firepower from multiple directions would overwhelm whatever defensive system it was using. IDS Warhammer, Steelfang, and Deathstrike moving to engage, reported Drexven. All weapons armed and ready. The 3 destroyers spread out to attack the human ship from different angles. Their captains were experienced veterans who had destroyed enemy fleets in dozens of battles. They approached with confidence, certain that 3 ships working together could handle one mysterious vessel. "Captain Chen," Vexthal broadcast on all frequencies, "you have one last chance to surrender." Her response was immediate. "Commander, please call back your ships. You're about to see things that will haunt your crew for the rest of their lives." "Destroy the human ship," Vexthal ordered. The 3 destroyers opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and kinetic projectiles filled the space around the Defiant. The attack was perfectly coordinated, with each ship covering a different escape route. There was no way for any normal vessel to avoid such concentrated firepower. But the human ship wasn't normal. As the weapons approached, the Defiant seemed to step sideways through reality itself. The attacks didn't miss. They passed through spaces where the ship had been moments before or would be moments later. or existed in some other timeline entirely. Then the human ship began to fight back. What emerged from the Defiant couldn't be called weapons in any traditional sense. They were more like corrections to reality itself. A beam of something that wasn't quite light and wasn't quite energy reached out toward the Warhammer. When it touched the destroyer's hull, the ship simply stopped existing in normal space. "Warhammer, report your status," Drexven called urgently. "Sir, we're not sure where we are," came the confused reply from the destroyer's captain. "Our sensors show we're still in the battle zone, but we can't see any other ships. It's like we're in the same location but in a completely different universe." The Steel Fang tried to retreat, but the Defiant fired what looked like a missile at them. The projectile moved in impossible ways, curving around the destroyer's defensive fire, and somehow arriving at its target before it had actually been launched. When it struck the ship, nothing seemed to happen at first. Then the Steel Fang's captain began screaming over the communication system. "Control, we have a problem. Our ship is firing on the escort vessels. I'm not giving the order to fire, but our weapons are shooting at our own ships." On the tactical display, Vexthal watched in horror as the Steel Fang turned its guns on two smaller escort vessels and began destroying them. The destroyer's weapons were under some kind of external control, forcing the ship to attack its own. "Allies, Captain, shut down your weapon systems," Vexthal ordered. "I'm trying, sir. The controls aren't responding. It's like the ship has a mind of its own." The third destroyer, Deathstrike, found itself facing something even worse. The human ship fired a weapon that looked like a ball of twisted space at them. When it hit, the destroyer didn't explode or lose power. Instead, its crew began reporting impossible things. "Control, this is Deathstrike." The captain's voice was filled with terror. "Our corridors they're wrong. Deck 7 leads to engineering, but engineering is supposed to be on Deck 12. Some of our rooms are bigger on the inside than they are on the outside. And sir, we keep seeing crew members who died in battles years ago walking around like nothing happened." Zephyr looked up from her science station, her face white with fear. "Sir, I'm detecting massive space-time distortions around all three destroyers. It's like reality itself is breaking down around them." Vexthal stared at the tactical display in shock. In less than 5 minutes, the human ship had defeated 3 of his best destroyers without actually destroying any of them. Instead, it had done something far worse. It had made them experience impossible things that challenged their crew's sanity. "Captain Chen," he called out. "Stop this. Call off your attacks." "I warned you, Commander," her voice replied, filled with regret. These are the consequences of forcing combat with a species that has learned to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality. More reports began flooding in from other ships in the fleet. Crews were reporting seeing things that couldn't exist. Rooms that led back to themselves, gravity that flowed upward, time moving backwards in certain sections of their ships. Some crew members claimed to see multiple versions of themselves working at the same stations. "Sir," Thexmol called out, his voice shaking, "I'm getting reports from 17 ships now. All of them are experiencing some kind of reality distortion. How is this possible?" Vexthal demanded. "Your species thinks of space and time as fixed things," Captain Chen explained. "But they're not. They're more like suggestions, guidelines that can be changed if you know how. My ship carries weapons that rewrite the rules of physics in small areas of space. That's impossible. Everything seems impossible until you understand it, Commander. Your ancestors probably thought flying through space was impossible until they learned how to build starships." On his command screen, Vexthal watched as more ships began reporting problems. The Steel Fang was still firing on Allied vessels, completely out of control. The crew of the Death Strike was reporting that some of their corridors now led to the outside of the ship but somehow still had air and gravity. Other ships throughout the fleet were beginning to experience their own reality distortions. "Sir," Zephyr said quietly, "I think I'm starting to understand what's happening. The human weapon isn't just affecting individual ships. It's spreading through the fleet like some kind of infection. Ships near the affected vessels are starting to show similar distortions. Can we stop it?" "I don't know, sir. This is completely outside any technology we understand. It's like trying to fight mathematics itself." Vexathal looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. These were seasoned warriors who had faced impossible odds before, and won. But now they looked like frightened children, confronted by something beyond their comprehension. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "What do you want from us?" "The same thing I've wanted from the beginning, Commander. Leave this system. Take your fleet and go home. I'll restore your ships to normal space-time once you begin withdrawing. And if we refuse, then things will get much worse. What you've seen so far is just the beginning. I have weapons that can make your entire fleet exist in different time periods simultaneously. I can turn your ships inside out without breaking their hulls. I can make your crew experience every possible version of reality at the same time." No, Bridge fell silent except for the continuing reports of impossible events throughout the fleet. Vexathal realized he was facing a choice that no Kethvari commander had ever had to make. Surrender to a superior enemy, or watch his entire fleet descend into madness. "Sir," Drexven whispered, "maybe we should consider her offer. Our weapons can't touch her ship, and she's tearing our fleet apart without even trying." "The Kethvari do not surrender," Vexathal snarled, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Then, you don't have to call it surrender," Captain Chen said gently. "Call it a strategic withdrawal. Call it a temporary retreat. Call it whatever you need to call it to save your pride. But Commander, I'm begging you. Don't make me show you what human weapons can really do when we stop holding back." Vexathal stared at the impossible human ship floating in space before his fleet. For the first time in his long military career, he was truly afraid. Dr. Zephyr had not slept in 18 hours. While the rest of the bridge crew struggled to maintain their sanity in the face of impossible events, she had buried herself in sensor data and scientific analysis. The readings from the human ship made no sense according to any known laws of physics, but she was determined to find some explanation. "Commander," she called out to Vexathal, who was slumped in his command chair looking older than his 400 years, "I need to show you something." Vexathal looked up with tired eyes. Around them, the bridge crew continued to monitor a fleet that was slowly going insane. Reports kept coming in from ships experiencing reality distortions that were spreading, like a plague through their formation. "What is it, Zephyr?" "Sir, I've been analyzing all the sensor data we've collected since we first detected the human ship. I think I know what we're dealing with." "Explain." Zephyr moved to the main display and brought up a complex diagram showing energy patterns and spatial measurements. "Sir, the human ship isn't just using advanced technology, it's operating according to completely different laws of physics. That's impossible. The laws of physics are universal. That's what we always believed, sir. But look at this data." She highlighted several sections of the readout. "The human vessel exists in a state of quantum superposition. It's simultaneously in multiple locations and states until the moment of interaction, when it collapses into whatever reality is most advantageous for it." Drexven looked over from his weapons station, confusion written across his face. "What does that mean in simple terms?" "It means, sir, that the human ship doesn't just move through space and time. It chooses which space and time to exist in. When we fired our weapons, they hit the ship in some realities but missed it in others. The humans simply chose to exist in the realities where our attacks failed." Commander Vexathal stood up slowly, his forearms trembling slightly. "Are you saying they can control reality itself?" "Not control it, sir. Work with it. From what I can tell, they've learned to exist in harmony with the quantum nature of the universe. Instead of forcing reality to obey their technology, they've built technology that flows with the natural flexibility of space and time. That's..." Vexathal stopped, unable to find words for what that meant. "Revolutionary, sir. It means they've moved beyond our understanding of science entirely. While we've been building bigger guns and stronger shields, they've been learning to rewrite the rules of existence itself." A new voice joined the conversation, Captain Chen speaking directly into their minds without using any communication system they could detect. "Dr. Zephyr is quite perceptive," the human said. "Your species has great potential for scientific advancement. It's unfortunate that you've chosen to focus that potential on conquest instead of understanding." "How are you speaking directly into our thoughts?" Zephyr asked. her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Consciousness exists in quantum space, Doctor. Once you learn to navigate higher dimensions, speaking mind to mind becomes as simple as speaking face to face. Show me, Zephyr said eagerly. Please, I need to understand how this works. There was a pause, and then suddenly, Zephyr's mind was filled with images and concepts that her brain could barely process. She saw space and time as living things that could be shaped and molded. She glimpsed dimensions beyond the normal three, where distance and causality were just suggestions that could be politely ignored. For a brief moment, she understood how the universe really worked at its deepest level. Then the vision stopped, and she collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face. Doctor, Vexthal rushed to her side. What happened? I saw it, she whispered. I saw how they do it, Commander. We're not just outmatched. We're like children playing with wooden sticks while they wield forces we can't even imagine. Explain. Sir, imagine you lived your whole life in a flat world, only able to move forward, backward, left, and right. Then someone showed you that you could also move up and down. That's what the humans have done, except they've discovered dimensions we don't even have names for. But we've always known about higher dimensions, Drexvin protested. Our scientists have theorized about them for centuries. Knowing they exist and learning to use them are completely different things, Zephyr replied. It's like the difference between knowing that fire exists and actually being able to create it. Captain Chen's voice returned, filled with compassion. Dr. Zephyr has grasped the basic concept. Your species could learn these techniques eventually, given enough time and the right guidance. But it would require abandoning your current path of aggression and conquest. Why? Vexthal demanded. What does conquest have to do with science? Because this level of technology requires a fundamental change in how you think about existence itself. You can't manipulate reality while trying to dominate it. The universe only responds to cooperation, not force. Around them, more reports continued to flood in from the fleet. The reality distortions were spreading faster now. The Steel Fang was still firing uncontrollably on Allied ships. The crew of the Death Strike reported that some of their corridors had become infinite loops. Crew members could walk for hours without reaching the end of a hallway that should have taken 30 seconds to traverse. Sir, Keftar called out, panic in his voice. The Eternal Valor is reporting that half their crew seems to be living the same day over and over again. They keep experiencing the same hour repeatedly, but they remember each repetition. And the Iron Will says their engine room is simultaneously on fire and perfectly normal, Thexamol added. The same space is experiencing both states at once. Vexthal looked at the chaos consuming his fleet and felt something break inside him. The pride that had driven him through centuries of successful campaigns crumbled in the face of an enemy he couldn't fight, couldn't understand, and couldn't defeat. Captain Chen, he said quietly, what will happen to my crews, the ones experiencing these reality distortions? They'll be fine, Commander. Confused and probably traumatized, but physically unharmed. I can restore them all to normal space-time the moment you begin withdrawing from this system. And if we don't withdraw, then the distortions will continue to spread and intensify. Eventually, your entire fleet will exist in so many different realities simultaneously that your crews will lose the ability to distinguish between what's real and what isn't. You would drive us insane? I don't want to, Commander, but if you force me to defend this system, I'll use whatever methods are necessary. The choice is yours. Vexthal walked to the main viewport and stared out at his fleet. 200 ships, the pride of the Kethvari Dominion, were being systematically defeated by a single vessel using weapons he couldn't comprehend. Some of his ships were attacking their own allies. Others were trapped in temporal loops or spatial distortions that made normal operations impossible. Sir, Zephyr said softly, there's something else you need to know. What? I don't think Captain Chen is even trying very hard. The energy readings from her ship suggest she's using only a tiny fraction of her available power. How can you tell? The quantum fluctuations, sir. If she were operating at full capacity, the distortions around her ship would be much more intense. It's like she's barely touching the controls of a machine that could reshape entire star systems. Vexthal closed his eyes and felt the weight of 3 centuries of military tradition pressing down on him. The Kethvari had never retreated from an inferior enemy. But were the humans really inferior? Or had the Kethvari been living in a delusion of superiority while other species surpassed them? "Captain Chen," he called out, "if we withdraw, will you restore our ships to normal?" "Immediately, Commander. Your crews will have no lasting effects from the reality distortions. It will be as if none of this ever happened." "And what about our pride? What about our reputation?" "Your pride is your own to manage, Commander. As for your reputation, that depends on what you choose to tell your superiors. You could report that you encountered a new form of defensive technology and decided that further study was needed before engaging. You could say that the humans showed no hostile intent and that continued presence in their territory would serve no strategic purpose. You would let us leave with our honor intact? Commander, honor isn't something that can be given or taken by others. It's something you carry within yourself. There's no shame in recognizing when you're outmatched and choosing wisdom over pride." Vexthal looked around his bridge at his officers. Drexven was slumped over his weapons console, staring at displays that showed his most powerful weapons were useless. Keftar was struggling to track ships that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. Thexamol was trying to maintain communications with crews that were experiencing time differently than everyone else. But it was Zephia who made the decision for him. The young scientist looked up from her instruments with tears still on her face and said, "Sir, we have to learn. We have to change. We can't keep believing we're the strongest when there are species out there that have learned to dance with the universe itself." "Doctor," Vexthal said slowly, "are you suggesting we surrender?" "I'm suggesting we evolve, sir. The humans aren't just technologically superior to us. They're philosophically ahead of us. They've learned something about existence that we haven't even begun to grasp." Captain Chen's voice returned, gentle but firm. "Commander, I'm detecting more Kethvari ships approaching this system. A second fleet probably sent as reinforcements. I really don't want to have to demonstrate these capabilities to another group of your people." Vexthal's blood ran cold. If Fleet Admiral Korvthak was bringing reinforcements, it meant the situation was being escalated to the highest levels of the Dominion military. More ships would mean more crews experiencing impossible things, more warriors driven to the edge of madness by encounters with technology they couldn't understand. "How long do we have?" he asked. "They'll arrive in approximately 6 hours, Commander. That gives you time to make a decision and begin withdrawing before they get here." Vexthal looked one more time at his fleet, at the impossible human ship, floating serenely in space, and at the officers who had served him faithfully for decades. Then he made the hardest decision of his military career. "All ships. This is Commander Vexthal. Prepare for strategic withdrawal. We are leaving this system immediately." The order to withdraw sent shockwaves through the Kethvari fleet. In over 500 years of expansion and conquest, no Dominion force had ever retreated from a single enemy vessel. Communications channels filled with confused voices as ship captains struggled to understand what was happening. "Sir, Captain Drexcon of the Iron Fist is requesting clarification," Thexmol reported. "He wants to know why we're withdrawing when we still outnumber the enemy 200 to 1. Commander Vexthal looked at the tactical display showing his scattered fleet. Nearly 40 ships were still experiencing reality distortions of various kinds. The Steel Fang continued to fire on Allied vessels despite the crew's desperate attempts to regain control. 3 heavy cruisers were trapped in temporal loops, experiencing the same moments over and over again. A dozen smaller ships reported that their internal geometry no longer made sense, with corridors leading to places they shouldn't go. "Tell Captain Drexkin that he's free to continue the engagement alone if he wishes," Vexthal replied. "But this fleet is withdrawing. Sir, he's requesting permission to take command of the fleet if you're unwilling to continue fighting." Vexthal almost laughed. In normal circumstances, such insubordination would result in a court-martial. But these weren't normal circumstances. Grant his request. Transfer command authority to Captain Drexcon. Let him learn the same lessons we've learned. As if summoned by his words, Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge once more. "Commander, Vexthal, I can hear the dissent in your fleet. Would it help if I demonstrated what happens when someone refuses to accept reality? What do you mean? Your Captain Drexkan seems determined to continue this fight. Perhaps a practical demonstration would convince your other officers that withdrawal is the wise choice. On the tactical display, the Iron Fist was breaking formation and moving toward the human ship. The heavy cruiser was impressive by Kethvari standards. Over 2 kilometers long, armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon, and crewed by some of the most experienced warriors in the fleet. Iron Fist. This is flagship, Vexthal called. Return to formation immediately. Negative, flagship, Captain Drexkan's arrogant voice replied. I refuse to retreat from a single primitive vessel. The Iron Fist will show these humans what Kethavari strength really means. Captain, you don't understand what you're facing. I understand perfectly, Commander. I see a fleet of cowards being intimidated by smoke and mirrors. Iron Fist out. The heavy cruiser accelerated toward the Defiant, all weapons charged and ready. Captain Drexicon had been one of the Dominion's most successful commanders, famous for his aggressive tactics and refusal to accept defeat. He had never met an enemy he couldn't overcome through superior firepower and sheer determination. This is going to be hard to watch, Captain Chen said sadly. The Iron Fist opened fire when it reached optimal weapons range. Every cannon, every missile launcher, every energy weapon on the ship discharged at once. The barrage was so intense that it created a miniature star for a few seconds, bright enough to be seen from neighboring systems. When the light faded, the Defiant remained exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. But something had happened to the Iron Fist. Iron Fist, report your status, Drexvan called from the weapons station. The response came in Captain Drexcon's voice, but it sounded wrong somehow, confused and frightened. Control, we have a problem. A big problem. Explain. Our ship is bigger than it was before, much bigger. The corridors stretch on forever, and some of the rooms have become vast spaces that you could fit entire cities inside. But that's not the worst part. What's the worst part? Vexthal asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Sir, we're not alone on this ship anymore. There are other versions of ourselves here. I can see myself from different timelines walking the corridors. Some of them are versions where I made different decisions, where I chose different paths in life. I just met myself from a timeline where I became a scientist instead of a warrior. That's impossible. I know it's impossible, sir. But I'm talking to him right now. He's telling me about discoveries he made, about peaceful first contacts with alien species, about a version of the Kethvari Dominion that explores instead of conquers. Zephyr looked up from her science station, her face pale. Sir, I'm reading massive dimensional distortions around the Iron Fist. It appears to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. The human weapon has forced the ship to experience every possible version of itself at the same time. Can we help them? I don't think so, sir. This is beyond our ability to understand, much less fix. Captain Drexcon's voice came back over the communication system, but now he was crying. Commander, I can see what we could have been. I can see versions of our species that chose exploration over conquest, cooperation over domination. I can see Kethvari scientists working alongside humans and dozens of other species, sharing knowledge, building wonders that span entire galaxies. Captain, focus on your current situation. Can you regain control of your ship? I don't want to regain control, sir. I want to stay here and learn from these other versions of myself. The scientist version of me has shown me equations that describe how reality works at its deepest level. The explorer version has told me about wonders beyond imagination. The philosopher version has explained concepts that make our entire culture seem primitive. More reports began coming in from other ships in the fleet. Those crews that had been experiencing reality distortions were now seeing similar visions. They were witnessing alternate versions of themselves, alternate histories where the Kethvari had chosen different paths. Sir, Keftar called out, his voice shaking. I'm getting reports from 37 ships now. Their crews are all seeing the same thing. Versions of themselves from timelines where we never became conquerors. Captain Chen, Vexthal said desperately. What have you done to them? I've shown them the truth, Commander. Reality isn't just one timeline, one set of choices, one way of being. It's infinite possibilities existing simultaneously. Your crews are seeing what they could have become if they had made different choices. Is this some kind of punishment? It's education, the hardest lesson anyone can learn, that the path you've chosen isn't the only path available. Your people have convinced themselves that conquest and domination are natural laws, but they're just choices, and choices can be changed. On the tactical display, more HFY ships were beginning to drift away from their formation, not fleeing but simply stopping their aggressive posture as their crews became absorbed in visions of alternate realities. "Sir," Drexven said quietly, "maybe we should listen to what they're seeing." "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if the humans are right? What if there is a better way to exist than constant warfare and conquest?" Vexthal stared at his weapons officer in shock. Drexven had been with him for over 50 years, through dozens of successful campaigns. He was as dedicated a warrior as any in the fleet. To hear him questioning the fundamental principles of HFY society was like hearing gravity debate its own necessity. "You can't be serious." "Sir, look at what we're facing. A single ship that can defeat our entire fleet without firing a shot in anger. Technology that makes our most advanced weapons look like stone knives. And they're not using it to conquer or destroy. They're using it to teach." Captain Chen's voice returned, gentler now. "Commander Vexthal, your reinforcement fleet will arrive soon. I can detect them at the edge of the system. I really don't want to have to subject more of your people to these revelations. What do you want from us? Leave. Take your fleet home. Tell your superiors that you encountered something beyond your current understanding. Recommend that future contact with humans be handled through diplomatic channels rather than military ones. And our crews who are experiencing these visions? They'll return to normal once you begin withdrawing from the system. But Commander, they'll remember what they've seen. They'll carry those memories back to your homeworld. Some of them will ask questions about why your society chose conquest over cooperation." Vexthal realized what the human was really saying. This encounter wouldn't just end with his retreat. It would plant seeds of change throughout the HFY Dominion. Crews would return home with stories of alternate realities where their species had chosen different paths. Scientists like Zephyr would become obsessed with understanding human technology. Philosophers would question the assumptions their society had built itself upon. "You're trying to change us," he said. "I'm showing you that change is possible," Captain Chen corrected. "What your people do with that knowledge is up to them." The reinforcement fleet appeared on long-range sensors, another 100 ships, under the command of Fleet Admiral Korvthak. Vexthal knew the Admiral well. He was even more aggressive than Vexthal himself, and would never accept retreat without an explanation. "Captain Chen, if Admiral Korvthak refuses to withdraw, what will you do?" "The same thing I did with your fleet, Commander. I'll show them the truth about reality and let them decide what to do with it. Even if it drives them insane? Sanity is just another choice, Commander. Your people define sanity as accepting the reality you've always known. But what if that reality is just one option among infinite possibilities? Is it really insane to see beyond the boundaries your culture has imposed on itself?" Vexthal looked around his bridge one last time. His officers were staring at their instruments, many of them lost in thought about what they had witnessed. The reports from his fleet continued to describe impossible things, crews meeting alternate versions of themselves, seeing histories. That could have been experiencing realities where the HFY were explorers and teachers instead of conquerors and destroyers. "All ships," he announced on fleet-wide communications, "begin immediate withdrawal from this system. Set course for Dominion space." "Sir," Captain Drexcan's voice came back from the Iron Fist. "Permission to remain behind. I want to learn more from the humans." "Denied, Captain. Return to formation." "With respect, sir, I no longer recognize your authority to give me orders. I've seen what we could become, and I refuse to go back to what we were." Similar requests began coming in from other ships. Crews that had experienced the reality distortions were asking permission to stay and learn from the humans. Some were requesting asylum, Others wanted to establish permanent contact, and a few were begging to be taught the science behind the impossible technology they had witnessed. Captain Chen's voice filled the communications channels, speaking to the entire fleet at once. To all Kethvari personnel who wish to remain and learn, you are welcome to do so. But understand that learning this knowledge will change you fundamentally. You cannot return to your old ways of thinking once you understand how reality really works. This is mutiny, Drexven whispered. No, Zephia said softly. This is evolution. In the end, 17 ships chose to remain in the system. Their crews had seen too much to go back to their old lives. They would become the first Kethvari to learn human science, the first of their species to understand that reality was far more flexible and wonderful than they had ever imagined. The remaining ships of Vexthal's fleet began the long journey home, carrying with them memories of the impossible and questions that would reshape their civilization. As the Eternal Conquest entered hyperspace, leaving the human ship far behind, Vexthal stood alone on his bridge thinking about the future. The Kethvari Dominion would never be the same. The crews returning home would spread stories of what they had seen. Scientists would demand to study human technology. Politicians would debate whether conquest was really the only path forward. Behind them, in that distant system, Captain Sarah Chen sat alone on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the Kethvari fleet disappear into hyperspace. She had not wanted this confrontation, but she had handled it with the wisdom that came from understanding the true nature of reality itself. The galaxy was vast, and there would be other encounters between humans and species that didn't understand what humanity had become. Each time the same choice would present itself: learn and grow, or remain trapped in old patterns of thinking. Captain Chen powered down her reality manipulation systems and returned her ship to normal space-time. The burden of being humanity's guardian in a galaxy that feared what it didn't understand was heavy, but it was a responsibility her species had chosen to bear. Somewhere in the distance, the 17 Kethvari ships that had chosen to stay began their first lessons in the true nature of existence. They would be changed forever, becoming bridges between their old civilization and the infinite possibilities that awaited those brave enough to step beyond the boundaries of conventional reality. The encounter was over, but its consequences would ripple across the galaxy for generations to come.